Uh-oh. Uh-oh. So, this past Friday was Epiphany, a day to commemorate the wise men coming to see Jesus. And with that in mind, we are going to start off with a short pop quiz. Don't worry, there's only one question. It's a very short pop quiz. I'm going to give you 3 phrases that describe someone, and I want you to guess who I'm referring to. You don't actually have to say it, but just think about it. So here we go. Who is this person? It was prophesied that he would be a king. He had to flee to Egypt to escape death, and some people referred to him as the King of the Jews. I'll give you a moment to mull that one over. Okay. Now, all right, Phil, what's the answer? Jesus. All right. If it was Sunday school, the answer would be Jesus, because the answer is always Jesus, right? Pretty well. You got that. And Jesus certainly fits the description here. But he's actually not the answer I'm looking for. Oh, so sad. So sad. Not the answer I'm looking for. He does work, but the answer we're actually looking for here is Herod the Great. I bet you didn't see that one coming. If you did, congratulations. You are the biggest history nerd ever. So, anyway. Strange but true. All of those things which apply to Jesus apply to Herod as well. When Jesus was 12, his family lost him in Jerusalem. We know the story. And they had to come back. And they found him in the temple, and he was discussing Torah with the sages. And some of those men may have thought to themselves, this boy would make a fine rabbi someday. He's really good. When Herod was 12, interestingly enough, when Herod was 12, a wise man named Menahem stated that one day this boy would be ruler over Judea. So there's your prophecy. Fast forward to 40 BC. Herod and one of his brothers rule over Judea together. A revolution took place led by Antigonus. He was the last of the Hasmonean kings. The Hasmonean line, those were the line of kings that came from when the Maccabees kicked the Greeks out of Judea. And that event is commemorated each year around Christmas time, and we know of it as Hanukkah. So that was the Hasmonean. So this Hasmonean rises the people up against him. And they capture Herod's brother, and they capture the current high priest who was corrupt. And they mutilated the high priest. And Herod's brother didn't want that to happen to him, so he killed himself so that he wouldn't be mutilated. Herod escapes. And he escapes to Egypt. When he goes to Egypt, he meets with a famous Egyptian ruler whom you've probably heard of. Her name was Cleopatra. So he meets with Cleopatra, and she offers him to be a general in her army. That's pretty cool, but that's not what he wants. He wants to get back to Judea to be king. So he keeps going on. He goes to Rome. He goes to Rome to talk with Octavian or Augustus Caesar. And while he is there and courts the favor of Rome, the Roman Senate designates him as king of the Jews. And they give him the aid he needs to go back to Judea and put down the revolution and end the reign of the last Jewish king over Judea. Herod accomplishes that in about 36 or 37 BC, approximately 30 years before Jesus is born. Now, I love history, and for all of those history lovers out there, I hope that this little view into the life of Herod has piqued your interest for this message, but this is not really a message about history. So that was just my little teaser to bring you in. Mostly for Phil. No. This message is about journeys. And it's a type of journey that we're all going to take in one way or another, probably, at one time or another. And so I want to talk about where we're going and why we might be going there. And the place we're going is Egypt. Why Egypt? Okay, we're not really going to Egypt in a literal sense. We're not going to Egypt. But various biblical figures at various times, for various reasons, have made their way to Egypt. And their stories can help us gain some perspective on our own journeys. Specifically, I'm going to be referring to our journey into the new year. That's going to be my specific focus today, but it doesn't necessarily have to be going into the new year. It could be going into a new school year. It could be going into a new job. It could be going into a new relationship. It could be a number of things. It's really any journey that involves a transition in your life. For some people, that journey is smooth and enjoyable, and for others, it can be rocky and treacherous. I have 3 biblical stories we're going to reference today to talk about the journey into Egypt. We're going to talk about Joseph being sold into slavery. We're going to talk about Joseph's family seeking food and coming to Egypt. And then we're going to talk about both the Jesus-Herod connection there, escaping to Egypt to save themselves. So we're going to start off in Genesis 37 with Joseph. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. So we've got this big family, got lots of brothers, and Joseph's the baby. And as can often happen, the baby of the family never really grows up in the eyes of the parents. They're always the one that needs a little bit more attention, a little bit more affection, or whatever. And Joseph is doted on by his father and brothers, and understandably, or by his father. And his brothers understandably hate this. And to make things worse, Joseph started having these dreams. And these dreams alluded to the idea that someday his brothers would have to bow to him. And the brothers, they get kind of fed up with Joseph. And so at line 20 we read, "Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits." Seems like a bit much, but, "Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams." But when Reuben heard of it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." Reuben said to him, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness. But do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand to restore him to his father." So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors he wore. And they took him and threw him in a pit. And the pit was empty. There was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat. And looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. Then Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. And they took Joseph to Egypt. Now, if you know how the story goes, you know that it kind of turns out. It turns out in the end. It works out. But we're not going to get that far yet. Right now, let's just think about Joseph. A teenage boy. He's just been beaten, robbed, got thrown in a pit, and now he's been sold as a slave, and he's on this journey to this far-off land. What's he thinking? What's going through his mind? He's probably thinking, I'm never going to see my dad again. My dad loves me so much, I love him, I'm never going to see him again. Does he have fears about what lies ahead for him? Is he irritated? I mean, he just doesn't have his robe anymore. He's kind of mostly naked. Is he very uncomfortable? Is he plotting to escape? Oh, if I use these, is he MacGyver? Is he trying to work his way out? I don't know. Is he plotting revenge against his brothers? I wouldn't think too highly of them at that point. I might think about it. We don't know. We don't know exactly what he's thinking, but it's an interesting scene to ponder. But what does any of this have to do with our future? Each of the journeys we're going to talk about to Egypt relate to a possible outlook we have when approaching the new year. The particular outlook attached to this story is one who sees the new year approaching and they feel like they're being pulled against their will. Joseph didn't want to leave home. His father loved him. He had nice clothes. Life was good. And perhaps you don't want to leave home either. Maybe 2016 seemed like a really good year. You felt like things were in a good place. You had things just the way you liked them. And along comes a brand new year to make a mess of it all. A new year brings new obstacles, new fears, new problems. You get another year older. Maybe you get some more aches and pains. Life gets that much busier. Maintaining friendships gets that much harder. You felt like you finally made it to the goal. You made it to the finish line. And here you are, starting the race all over again. Except the course might be harder this time. You're unsure if you have what it takes to do it again. Change is forcing its way into your life, and you simply want no part of it. The past was good enough. Why can't I just live there in peace? That, of course, is the problem. You can't live there in peace, because you can't live there at all. You are a temporal being, which is a fancy way of saying that you live within time. You're at the mercy of time. You could even say that you're a slave to time. It carries you along whether you like it or not. And you probably didn't mind when you were younger and kind of like a young person fresh out of college and looking to explore the world or explore new horizons and go off and hitch a ride to who knows where. It doesn't matter. Off to see the world. But at some point, you realize that you've been shanghaied. And time isn't going to just let you off someplace because you liked it right there and you want to stay. You don't get to do it. It keeps going. It keeps dragging you along. So what are your choices? You can weep and bemoan the good times you've left behind, and you can fight the trip the whole way. It doesn't do you any good, but that doesn't seem to deter the people who keep trying it. I have something else for you to think about instead. Your pain comes from leaving everything behind, but there's one thing that you have not left behind. Not only have you not left it behind, but it is a line that connects you to all those past times that you loved so dearly. And that one thing is God. You see, you can't live in the past, but He can, and He does. And He lives now, and He lives next year. All at the same time. You see, He's outside of time. All of time is now for Him. God experiences your today and your yesterday and your tomorrow all at once. The day you were born, the day you put gum in your sister's hair, the day you aced the test, the day you had the best party ever with your friends, the day you finally got the VCR program just right, or the day that you just gave up on the VCR and you let it blink 12 o'clock forevermore. All those days are now for God. He knows the joy you felt. He knows the joy you're going to feel. In short, He understands what you're feeling about tomorrow and what you miss about yesterday, because He sees it as if it were today. Many people pull away from God when they feel lost in a journey. But I say you must draw closer, for He's the one part of your past you can always have with you. He is there for all of it. He's there for all of it. And He brings it along to comfort you and see you into the future. When you give all these things to God, you get to take them all with you. Trust in him and walk with him in the journey, and he will see you through it, and he will show you how to create even more memories that you'll both get to share for a lifetime. And now we have some other journeys to talk about, so we're going to move on. We're going to move on to Joseph's family now, to talk about a different kind of journey. We're in Genesis 42. When Jacob learned that there was grain for sale in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you look at one another?" And he said, "Behold, I have heard that there is grain for sale in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might happen to him. Thus the sons of Israel came to buy among the others who came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Many years have passed since Joseph's brothers sent him packing for Egypt. There's a great famine in the land and food is scarce. And now they are on their own trip to Egypt. Again, I want you to put yourselves into this journey. Whereas Joseph saw nothing to look forward to in his journey. It was scary. I don't know what's coming, but I don't like it. I like where I came from. For his brothers, they're looking for hope. The place they left has nothing to offer them, only crops and livestock that are turning into dust. They could stay if they wanted. Maybe they could find another way out of the famine. Maybe they could get help from someone else. Maybe the famine will let up soon. They were not forced into this journey like their brother was, but they made a choice to accept the journey and see what possibilities it offered. Maybe this is your story as well as theirs. This is really the opposite of the last story we spoke of. In the first case, you see your past as the only thing having any worth. In this case, the past is worth nothing. The last year or years were a total waste. All that you've worked for, all your efforts, all your goals, all your aspirations have turned to dust, like the crops in that famine. The past holds nothing for you, and forward is the only way worth going. Not that you feel the journey is being forced on you, like the person in the first case, but you go along with the slight reluctance that comes with that sting of admitting past failures. If there is any hope for you, it's ahead. Maybe this will be the year. Maybe this will be the time that things finally work out. You could be right, and you could be wrong. In the most literal sense, God only knows. This journey, may seem more healthy than the first one, but it has its troubles. I've heard it said that experience is the best teacher. It gives the tests first and the lessons after. This only works if you see that experience as having some purpose and importance. If you neglect the past, see it as a waste, then you can never hope to learn from it. You may respond to me by stating, well, that's all fine for you to say, but what losses have you had this past year? What great failures have you faced? What painful separations were you subjected to? What trials have you endured? And I must admit, not many. I suffer the same daily strains as anyone, but I count myself lucky for the life I live. And sometimes I fear it's too good. And someday, God will remember me and wonder why He's given me so much while asking so little of me. As C.S. Lewis puts it, I worry that God will love me too much. That He'll take such a keen interest in me that I'll become His special project to mold and to shape and to reshape and to reshape until I'm just the right shape. And it's probably not the shape I would think of for myself. And the act of being shaped is probably no fun at all. The result, my life would no longer consist of being the person I like, but the person God wants. And the person God wants is one who has learned to rely on Him. How often do we rely on God when the sky is blue and everything is lovely. We don't. We're too busy having a good time to even notice that he's there. Not that he dislikes our having a good time, but only through difficulty are we shaped. And through experience we learn to be the kind of person God has made us to be. Now, I'm not sure that knowing this makes the journey that much easier or any easier. But I want you to know it has purpose. Your past, however difficult, however wasted it seems to you, has served to bring you to this moment. And this moment is the threshold of you being that much closer to God's design for you. In all of this, I have neglected to point out that you may not be the only beneficiary of all this shaping. Whereas you may see no use in the path of your life, there may be countless lives that were shaped by you, and shaped for the better. For God knew that you were the right one for the job, and he still thinks that. And he still has plenty of work, both to do on you and to do with you, if you'll only let him. And now let's move on to our third journey. Matthew 2, starting at line 2. Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose, and we've come to worship him. Now here we are at the Epiphany story. The wise men have come from the east to seek the newborn king. And Herod asks the priests where this child is supposed to be born, and they tell him. And then he tasks the wise men to go find this child and then report back to him so that he can supposedly go worship as well. The wise men, as we know, do not report back because an angel tells them not to. And then at line 13, we read this. Now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, Rise, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you. For Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him. And he rose and took the child and his mother by night and departed to Egypt, and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet, Out of Egypt I called my son. We have already spoken of the life and times of Herod. We know what happened the last time a Jewish king rallied the people against him, and he was certainly not of a mind to have that happen again. This time he had an opportunity to defeat his enemy as a child, and he took that opportunity. And in the greatest of ironies, he put Jesus in the exact same place he had been in almost 40 years previous, on a flight to Egypt. So our first story involves not letting go of the past so you can embrace the future. And our second story was about seeing no value in the past and looking ahead for some kind of hope. So what kind of journey does this story teach us about? It's one of fear. In this case, you are not simply pulled along by time, and you are not simply turning your back on the past that holds no value for you, but you are running from your past, as if something or someone is hunting you. I'm going to give you a comparison with the second kind of journey to make the distinction a little clearer here. Let's say that you own a factory. It's actually a factory that your grandfather built. And then it passed down to your father, and then it passed down to you. And this factory, it's filled with workers that have been there forever. And all of you are like one big family. You know each other, you care about each other. It's a great place. And then one weekend, you get a phone call from the fire department that says, your factory just burned down. Just burned to the ground. There's nothing left. All of your family's life work is in ashes. All of the employees you care so much about are now unemployed, and they're going to face great hardship. You are on the second journey that we talked about. The past is gone. It's in ash. Now let's say that you're the teenage boy of one of the employees. One day, you and some friends are out doing unwise things, as teenage boys are apt to do. And by accident, you started the fire at the factory. The ruin of many families' lives, including your own family, is on your shoulders. Maybe no one else knows except you, but that's enough. You are on the third kind of journey. This can be a very dangerous journey because you need to escape, but you might not be too particular about where you escape to. The more awful ways that come to mind are alcohol and drugs and whatever else you can imagine of that type. But even the less awful ways are not that healthy. Throwing yourself into work or doomed relationship or even escaping into books. The path of this journey is actually a little bit different than the others. And to understand that, we have to discuss a certain reality that exists for all three of these journeys. You're traveling to Egypt, but you can't stay there forever. Those who resist the trip the most will stay the longest. And those who run there the fastest must also return the quickest. When Joseph was sold into slavery, he didn't want to go, but he lived out his life there. And then his family, they went, but they actually had to go back and forth a few times. And it took them a little bit longer, but eventually they got there. And then they stayed there for their lifetime. Many generations later, the Hebrew people did leave Egypt and returned home. They couldn't stay there forever, but they were there a long time. How long was Jesus in Egypt? And nobody knows for sure. They don't. People who study this kind of thing say that he could have been in Egypt maybe just a couple of months. It might not have been very long at all. And Herod, when he was running, when he ran to Egypt, what he saw was not in Egypt. He didn't stay long. He kept moving. Those who are on that first kind of journey we talked about, they need to learn how to break away from the past, so they have to stay longer. They have to stay out there longer. They have to break away from the past. And those on the second journey, they need to learn to build something while using their past. So they have that connection to the past, but they have to look forward and build something. Those on the third journey, they have unfinished business at home. You can run, but you can't hide. You can escape to Egypt, but you can't escape yourself. Herod had to return to become king. Jesus had to return to fulfill all God had planned for him. And the teenager who burned down the factory has to stop running from his past and come back to it if he ever wants to have a real future. And are you running from something? Are you on the third journey? If you are, you may be the only one who realizes that you're running. And actually, I take that back. Even you might not realize it. Now, this is another time when someone could easily say, "Why should I listen to you? What do you know about it? How can you know about what I've gone through, the guilt I feel, the anguish that haunts me?" I suppose I only know as much about guilt as anyone who's felt it. But there is a praise that I would offer you, that I am happy for your guilt. For guilt is the first sign that you can be saved. You can only feel guilt if you first know that there is both right and wrong, and you have somehow fallen into the wrong. If you were thoroughly bad, you would not know how bad you were, and you'd have no guilt at all. And so if you are dealing with guilt in your life right now, if something in your past is weighing down on you, realize that what you are feeling is not a punishment. It's a lifeline. It's a line that leads directly to the one person who still loves you when you can no longer love yourself. Even if you can't forgive yourself, he can forgive you. And once you know that someone can forgive you, then you know there's hope for you. Stop running. Herod is dead. He can no longer harm you. Your sin is dead. It can no longer harm you. If only you will trust in God and let him be your guide on the journey and all those journeys yet to come. You too will be free to fulfill that plan that life that God has laid out for you. So whichever of these journeys that you may be on, and you might not be on any of them today. You might not be on any of these journeys right now. But someday you might. Know that the journey is not to be taken alone. And you're never really alone. Allow God to lead you into Egypt. And someday He will lead you home again. Amen.